You are the adult in the room, not your kid. And only you have the ability to manage your emotions in a way that a child probably can't.
I mean, who knows how to regulate and manage their emotions? Not many people, but that is probably the most important thing about being a parent.
Where's that behavior coming from? Why are you labeling it as bratty? What is the wound associated with that term? How does that relate to how you were perceived as a child by your parents? You've got to unpack it.
It really comes back to the home. It really comes back to our ability to create that environment where the child is regulated and safe.
I think I've got a new word, attuned leadership. That's what we're looking for.
Welcome to Becoming Untriggered, a podcast brought to you by psychodynamic coaches and parents of three, Lavinia and Andrew Lynn.
Together we normalise and unpack common challenges faced by couples and parents, explore how these could be symptoms of unprocessed trauma, and support you with the tried and tested tools for you to show up as the mum or dad, partner, and person you deserve to be.
Welcome to Becoming Untriggered podcast. Today we're looking at a fear that many parents have that their child might become an entitled brat. And what's actually going on underneath that, which is a lack of acceptance, not only of yourself and how you feel you should behave in society, but therefore, obviously, as a result of that, how your child should behave. And whether that is based on values or actually wounds.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on parents externally and probably internally as well about how their kid turns up, whether it be at school or in society in general. And a lot of parents are looking for guidance, whether that's parenting techniques, and all of them come with plus or minus points.
Yeah, I think the problem is we were parented in often a very strict way, one that could be described as authoritarian. It's my way or the highway. You do what I say just because I'm the adult. That we don't want that anymore. We don't want to be that kind of parent. And yet the opposite side, permissive parenting, is too lax. The child can't be in charge, obviously. So we want a middle ground, authoritative, where your children choose to follow you because you're the strong leader. They recognize you as the person they want to follow. But getting that right in practice is not the same as saying in theory, yeah, this is the kind of parenting model I subscribe to.
Yeah, and you can't build a parenting model structure on a rocky foundation. If there's no safety in the home, if you've got wounds, if you're bringing all unconscious baggage from your parents, if you're bringing generational trauma into the house and then trying to put a parenting method on top of that, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I want to just expand on what you say by safety, because I think a lot of people are like, oh no, I'm safe. I had a safe upbringing. My household is safe for my children. It's not about electrical safety or physical safety. It's about your child feeling safe enough to bring whatever big feelings they are feeling to you.
Yeah.
To ask you for advice, to ask you for support, to be able to be vulnerable, to be able to be out of control, to be able to have a tantrum and know that you won't not love them, that you won't break that bond that you have with them as a result of their behavior. So I just want to qualify that because I think that's really important. The safety we're talking about is the safety to be truly authentic. And I think this links back to what we're talking about, right?
Yep.
Accepting your children's behavior and accepting what authenticity looks like to them, which might not be what it looks like to you. And it might not be what it looked like to your parents. This feeds into true acceptance. And a lot of my clients have this without realizing. They only accept behavior that makes sense to them. I.e., if the child is whining, crying, being, inverted commas, difficult because they've got a temperature or they're ill or they're going through exams or they're being bullied at school, then that's acceptable. The reasoning makes sense. It is a valid reason for them to be upset. If, however, it's something that rubs up against what might be a wound in them, for example, be a fear of being late, a fear that their children aren't eating enough, that they're going to be weak and not grow up to be strong, a fear that their children aren't eating the right foods, a fear that their children are not being compliant, are going to be brats, then suddenly that reasoning isn't there anymore. There's no validation for why the children are behaving like that. That's when the parents have problems. That's when they can't accept behavior that makes them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, for sure. Safety is not about having a nice house and having nice things and going to the right school. Safety is also about, is the environment regulated in the house? Are the parents present when they're at home? Are they connected? Are they attuned to the child? That creates the safety. And all of these things, behavior, we often think of behavior in the house, but a lot of people are also very worried about how their children are turning up in the world. I think a lot of parents are looking for solutions in those environments, like school, etc., when the things that we can control are the home, how our children feel, how regulated they feel, how safe they feel emotionally.
And it's not about blame. It's about taking responsibility. A big factor in creating a, inverted commas, unsafe house is stress. If you are stressed because of your work, if you're stressed because of money issues, if you're stressed because your relationship isn't going well, if you are stressed because you're worried about your child's neurodivergence, any kind of stress that you bring into the house that you haven't processed, i.e. made space for, validated, maybe journaled out, inner parented on, that stress is probably going to be projected directly onto your loved ones, or the house not being tidy, or the dishwasher not being stacked correctly. We all have stresses of a certain kind. How are you dealing with them? Because if you're not dealing with them, you are less able to be attuned to your child. What does that mean? Understanding what your child is going through. So then again, it comes back to what I said earlier, not accepting behavior that doesn't have a valid excuse or reason behind it. Is it reasonable given the environment of my home, given how that's affecting my child, given what my child is going through? That's very different. And that's where my clients struggle with acceptance.
Yeah, I think the pressure is real. We all feel it. Stress is very real. We're living in quite stressful times. There's financial stress, there's pressure. We're all trying to do a good job. But how you turn up at home, you are in control of that.
Yeah. However hard it is, I recognized this, what I just said, really clearly last weekend when we had that horrendous experience with a guy, a bailiff, who came round, it wasn't mistaken identity, but the bloody bill hadn't gone to the right address. So it was a mistake. But the whole experience was so stressful, even though I didn't get stressed at the time, that I ended up nitpicking at the kids for the rest of the day. And I was like, what am I doing? And I was like, oh, okay. I haven't processed the stress of that situation. I'd been calm, and that's why it was confusing, because I'd been quite calm in the actual situation. So sometimes we have to go, well, what am I carrying? And it might not be obvious. I said it's not about blame, but it is about responsibility. You are the adult in the room, not your kid. You are the adult, and only you have the ability to manage your emotions in a way that a child probably can't.
100%. I mean, who knows how to regulate and manage their emotions? Not many people, but that is probably the most important thing about being a parent. Can I turn up safe, calm, present, connected with all the stuff that's going on? And there are two parts to it. Number one is managing what is going on in your life at the moment. That is challenging enough.
Yeah.
Let alone if you're still carrying around the emotional baggage of literally your generational trauma, your parents, your grandparents, then it's almost impossible for you to manage those emotions. and the emotions and the stress that you're experiencing on a daily basis.
Yeah, because as a quick recap for those that have just joined this podcast and then your stuff that you're carrying, your baggage, will get stirred up by whatever it is that reminds the child that first stuffed those feelings down of that experience. So if you're carrying generational trauma, or you're carrying relationship trauma, or whatever it is, your children's behavior, your husband's behavior, your colleagues' behavior will stir up those old feelings, and you will end up reacting like a child or a teenager because that behavior has reminded you of how you felt back then. But going back to what you said, actually, processing emotions. Yes, it's our responsibility as the adults in the relationship. But like you said, there are other adults in the relationship. Schools. Our children are going into institutions where most of the adults that are in charge don't know how to do it either. And unfortunately, there's that, school culture that's even more ill-adapted to today's world in that they are still following that authoritarian method, right? It's my way or the highway. I'm the teacher. If you don't do it, you get sent to the deputy head. It's so hierarchical. There's no kind of, well, how's the child feeling? Why might the child have acted in that way? And, this might veer off into neurodivergent behavior, but that's, I think, a really hot topic because neurodivergent kids, I'm so grateful for. They're such a gift, really, if we think bigger picture, because they are highlighting issues within school and institutional structures that perhaps wouldn't have come to light in the way that they have had these neurodivergent kids had not experienced maybe more unfair behavior directed at more extreme behavior in them, if that makes sense. I think schools and adults not taking responsibility for processing their emotions and therefore projecting it onto their kids without any kind of liability, without any kind of self-reflection, that's a real issue.
Is an issue. And as a parent, number one, you've got to be in control of your home and how you're turning up. But also, I think you've got to be aware of that. You've got to back your children in those circumstances. It's not that the institutions are always right. It's not that the labels are always right. It's like, is that environment supportive for my child?
Yeah. Or is it making it worse?
Is it making it worse? Because also part of this is about giving your child confidence to turn up in the world and that they're not broken and that they can be authentic and that they are right in those feelings.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. Again, this is where some of the internal conflict comes in. There's not one mother that I haven't spoken to who doesn't want their child, in particular a girl, given the patriarchy that we live in right now, that doesn't want their child to be able to stand up for themselves. Do you want your child to be, say it's a boy, to get punched in the street, or your daughter to get mugged in the street and not defend themselves? Of course not. Do you want your daughter to go into an abusive relationship and take it? Of course not. We want our children to have a radar for behavior that is not okay, that is abusive or takes advantage of them. And yet, so many parents, probably because of their own authoritarian upbringing, have this inbuilt, kind of fear around schools, the government, the law, right? Assuming that these people are always correct. They're not. They're flawed. Lawyers are human. Teachers are human. Politicians are human, as we know all too well. So it's about kind of shifting that wound that we have around misplaced loyalty to authority and then applying that to our children. If your child is misbehaving, inverted commas, or behaving in a way that the teacher or the school finds intolerable, well, let's look at everyone's point of view here. And that doesn't happen unless you really push for it.
It's so complicated. I think there's the two kind of extremes. I think you're right in what you say, but also I think there are entitled children and bratty children that can turn up in those environments. It is about how the child turns up in that environment. It really comes back to the home. It really comes back to our ability to create that environment where the child is regulated and safe, but also knows themselves and loves themselves and is confident, but respects firstly, us as authority, when we are making sense, when we are turning up as present and authentic and telling them something that's actually for their benefit that they don't necessarily agree with, but because we're explaining it and communicating it in a certain way, they respect that.
Yeah.
Then the child will turn up in that environment and either push back if it's authoritarian
Or doesn't make sense.
or doesn't make sense, or they'll ask questions, but they will turn up and respect authority when it comes across in the right manner.
And also they'll be able to spot projected emotions, going back to why I brought up schools. So this incident with one of our children, they noticed that it wasn't disrespectful behavior. That teacher was taking it as disrespectful because where I started this whole thing off, that behavior wasn't acceptable to that teacher. And that anger that they felt came across in labeling one of our children as disrespectful, which is it's just so lazy. So these labels of difficult, disrespectful, disobedient, spoilt, it's so Victorian. It's so old-fashioned, where there was just no attunement. I remember when I was growing up, it was always about they're so spoilt. So if someone was behaving badly, there were three things. There was positive criticism of other people or positive judgment. They know how to behave. Whether it was a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, they know how to behave, whatever the hell that means. Then if they didn't know how to behave, it was either they're just attention-seeking, they need a good spanking, or they're spoilt. There was nothing in between. No ability to attune, to put yourself in the position of that other person and inquire with curiosity and compassion as to someone else's worldview. So we're obviously not there yet, but I think a lot of institutions are still there.
None of them took responsibility for their impact on how the child was turning up. And I think that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about if you're concerned about your child's behavior, then there's an opportunity to take responsibility for how you're turning up for that child. We, as the parents, have a massive responsibility.
Yeah, because we have the skills that they don't. That's the bottom line. They are not psychologically evolved enough to process their feelings on their own. Full stop.
That's what parenting's about.
Full stop. I know, but people don't seem to realize that. Like, we have the skills. We may not be using them very well, but we have them.
Well, that's the problem. So let's come back to that point, is that if you have a lot of unresolved childhood trauma, number one, you're carrying around the emotions of those experiences that are going to get triggered by your children, and you're going to project it onto them. Those emotions are going to determine and dictate the environment and the nest with which your child grows up in. So that's two massive things that affect the child's experience, your connection with them, their nervous system, how they treat authority. But also, you're going to have I call it a fragmented inner child that is alive within you, basically, that is your co-parent. So how can you be that responsible parent if you have an inner child, if you're parenting from that point of view? It's basically impossible. You are part child trying to raise children.
Yeah, which brings me to a point I wanted to bring up about one of the wounds that gets in the way, which is absolutely fueled by the inner child, which is this misconstrued notion of gratitude, which links back into entitlement and brattiness, because the wound of gratitude seems to be the opposite to entitlement, i.e., if I am grateful, if I instill gratitude, humility into my children, then they can't be bratty. No, I get where you're coming from. That makes sense. But that's not gratitude as a value. So for me, gratitude as a value is appreciating nature, appreciating all of the good things that you have in your life, the abundance that you have, even if it's not financial abundance, counting your blessings, focusing on what is going well. That's amazing. No one can knock that because it makes you feel good. It lifts your spirits. It fills you with inner peace and joy. Amazing. But that is not the same as you must feel grateful Otherwise, you are suffering from white privilege, or you're complaining about a first world problem, or you're not inclusive or not empathetic to the ills and the strife that is going on in the world. For example, Gazan children being killed, starving children in Ethiopia. That's not the same. Because how does that make you feel? I think if you're not sure on the difference, well, how do you feel when you think about gratitude? If it uplifts you, amazing, then it's a value. If it makes you feel guilty, if it makes you feel like you have to make yourself smaller, belittle yourself, make yourself more humble to fit in with those who are suffering, then that's not a value, that's a wound. And trying to instill that under your children, in our day, it was, you need to make a clean plate because there are children in Ethiopia that are starving. It doesn't make sense. What, I need to eat something I don't like, or I need to eat more than I want to because I already feel full because someone somewhere is starving? That's completely illogical.
I think parents get stuck in that cycle. For me, it's quite simple. You can't be grateful for anything or appreciate anything if you don't appreciate yourself. So it comes from a point of self-worth. You can't hate yourself and then be grateful for everything else. And if we try and instill gratitude in our children, but it comes across as criticism, i.e., don't do that, you should be grateful, or whatever it is, then that's the opposite of self-worth.
Yeah.
Criticism is the opposite of self-worth. It's like a perceived positive value. That's why I don't like values, based on a foundation of low self-worth.
Yeah.
There's a disconnect there. It's false.
You're completely right. It's not coming from a place of self-love. Gratitude is not something you have to work at. If you love yourself, and therefore you love other people, you love nature, you love the world, you love your life. It's just a byproduct.
It's an experience.
It's a feeling, exactly. If you're finding you have to instill gratitude or feel it because otherwise you're a bad person, then it's not working. And this is what can come in the way of acceptance of our children. If your child's going to be bratty or entitled, they do something that comes across like that, well, where's that behavior coming from? Why are you labeling it as bratty? What is the wound associated with that term? How does that relate to how you were perceived as a child by your parents? You've got to unpack it.
Yeah, I think the gratitude is one thing, and I think you use the word, but I think it comes down to behaviors. So a lot of parents want their children to behave in a certain way. And if your mechanism of determining those behaviors requires a lot of criticism of their behavior, which is often authentic. Like I said, kids don't care about time. Kids don't care about cleanliness or tidiness. Cleanliness is probably important, but tidiness maybe not necessarily. If they're acting authentically as children, oh, I like that, I want to grab that, oh, I want to eat that, whatever it is, that's an authentic behavior. So if you're trying to mold them by criticizing authentic behavior all the time, all you're doing is damaging their self-worth, damaging that foundation that they're going to come out of your house with.
Yeah.
And
Or going to school with. And all that does is lead to dysfunction. That leads to bad, inauthentic behavior. People pleasing.
Like, authenticity is never bad. It never comes with the expense of others. Authenticity is never rude to other people. It's just authentic.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing that a lot of parents may be trying to do the right thing, but it comes across as criticism all the time, and that's damaging.
I think you're right. I think I used to criticize a lot because I thought I was helping. It came from a good place. Of course it did. I want the best for my children. But also, I think it comes from this need for our children to fit in, and therefore for us to fit in as parents. But what's that based on? That is based on a fear of them not fitting in, which is back to the bratty entitlement. No one wants a child that is disliked, that's the odd one out. that is isolated by other children. I mean, that brings up so much pain for so many mothers. And, going back to being late or what they're eating, it all usually, when I get people to do a core fear exercise, track that fear down to its very, very essence, it's, I don't want my child to feel alone, unloved. And yet, how do we go about it? By making them feel unloved, by trying to correct their behavior.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
I think from my experience, it's rooted in that behavior from their parents, which for me, it's like this punitive environment where behavior is more important than safety and love.
Yeah, and bad behavior has to be eradicated somehow.
And authentic childlike behavior used to be bad in a lot of societies.
Yeah.
It's also linked to people pleasing. So if you were given lots of conditional love and you externalize your love, and your love comes from how other people perceive you, then a lot of parents look at their children through the eyes of other people and also themselves. So if my child misbehaves, if they're too loud, if they take too much at a birthday party, if they're fighting with another child,
they can't share,
then the other parents are going to judge me badly. So that comes back to, I receive love via how other people perceive me, which is how you were parented. And therefore, a lot of people are in these environments with their children, viewing how their children are perceived via the other parents, feeling dysregulated, feeling that, well, I'm not going to be loved if my child misbehaves.
Yeah.
So they take that fear and that anger of those experiences and project it onto the child.
Totally.
You can't do that. Be a nice boy. Share.
Play nicely.
Yeah,
what the hell does that even mean?
Yeah.
Play nicely.
So again, criticism based on your childhood wounding and how other people are perceiving you.
Back to acceptance. I think the bottom line is, it's kind of obvious to everyone, but we have to unpack what comes in the way of that, is accepting yourself. You're not going to accept yourself if you had a childhood in which you were criticized every time you were authentic. So it is about going back to all of these wounds, all of these labels that you carried. I used to have difficult, indulgent, selfish, cold. That was my little band of 4. You have to go into all of these labels that you were called and heal that wound. Because if you don't, you're going to have an issue with your child being difficult, your child coming across as, inverted commas, selfish. You're literally projecting onto them. So you can't accept them. So you have to accept yourself first. When you feel love for all of your parts, doesn't mean that you're not selfish, but you're going to love the part of you that's selfish, that's able to act in ways that feel good to you when it doesn't always seem that way to anyone else. That's okay. That's self-care. If you do that, then gratitude naturally flows from there. Joy naturally flows from there. Regulation naturally flows from there. And you will create an environment in your home that feels safe, calm, and loving. That's how your children are going to be more predisposed to being calm and good, inverted commas. And if they're not, you're going to be more able to accept them as well. So I think that's the kind of bottom line, isn't it?
You're exactly right. If you want your child to turn up as the best versions of themselves, whatever that looks like in whatever environment, the safety of the environment they grow up is important. And I think acceptance is a good word for it. Self-worth, accepting themselves. From a man's point of view, the important things about creating the safety are being present and connected with the child when you're present. You may think you're present, but it's about being present emotionally. And the way to get present emotionally is being able to regulate your emotions, leaving your stress at the door, processing your old emotions, your emotional baggage. A lot of people are up to here with their emotional baggage. So if you can process and let go of that and learn how to regulate and process your own emotions, then you can turn up in the home present and connect with that child in the moment. That creates the foundation of safety and regulation, so your child can go out into the world, which may be not feel that safe, but at least they're coming from a safe starting point. And then acceptance is about accepting yourself, loving yourself unconditionally, learning how to do that, so you can provide the leadership and the guidance for your children, but not based on what you want or what you think society wants them to be, or this ideal of how they should turn up, but give them that leadership and that guidance for who they are. So see them, connect with their interests, teach them how to tap into their interests, and then give them the guidance within that to help them turn up as the authentic version of themselves. And then they've got a chance.
100%. I think I've got a new word: attuned leadership.
Attuned leadership. I like that.
That's what we're looking for.
If what we discussed was helpful, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. For more of the same, check out my social media, The Inner Child Healing Expert, or to work with me, go to laviniabrown.com.
You can find me on andrewlynn.net or Life Coach for Dads on Instagram. We work with both individuals and couples. If there are any topics you'd like us to cover, please reach out. Thanks for listening.